As the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, or ISIS, maintains its grasp on Iraq, Canada is offering aid to the country's most vulnerable. In an exclusive interview with CBC's Power and Politics, Canada's ambassador to Iraq says he's working on the ground with government officials and religious leaders to get Canadian aid directly to where it's needed. Bruno Sacomani has been in Erbil in northern Iraq for the past 3 days. He says half of the $5 million Canada has promised will go to the Yezidi community.
The first tranche of that $5 million, I would say, if I remember my numbers correctly, at least half of it is going to go to 3 NGOs that are already on the ground, and that will go to assist immediately peoples other than the ones caught on Mount Sinjar. The rest of the amounts is an amount that we're working at with the Yazidi religious leaders in order to formulate a plan in order to get that relief specifically to the Yazidis. We met with the Yazidi leaders yesterday, and we are working with them to find out what it is exactly that we can get to them. And basically, it's, again, emergency relief, humanitarian aid, everything from water to shelter to medicine to food. This is something that we should be able to proceed quite quickly with.
But how far will that money go? According to Kurdish Canadians, not far enough to maintain the long-term safety of the Yezidi and other residents of Iraq's Kurdish north. Now, today they're holding a rally on Parliament Hill to call for more humanitarian aid as well as support for Kurdistan's military, the Peshmerga. Perjeen Jaffer and Al Jaff are co-organizers of today's rally. They joined me this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
And we also have a little protester here, too. Who's that? Who's this?
This is our boy.
Okay.
My boy, actually, sorry.
Okay. What's his name?
His name is Diaco.
Hi, Diaco. We just heard that clip with Bruno Sacomani, Canada's ambassador to Iraq. Why isn't what are the shortcomings with the $5 million?
Well, we're of the position that it's just not enough. There's in the last couple of years, there's been 2 million refugees that flooded the gates of Kurdistan in north of Iraq. So, I mean, realistically, Canada's donating $5 million for 2 million refugees. Yes, there's about 800,000 that have recently flooded with the conflict in Iraq. But when you look at the bigger situation, there are still 2 million refugees that the Kurds and the Kurdish government up north are looking after, including giving them humanitarian aid, protecting them, setting up refugee camps for them up north. So I don't think it's enough.
Is it the humanitarian aid that's not enough, or you'd like to see a different kind of approach from the Canadian government?
It wouldn't be enough, I think, because, I mean, yes, we're also looking for military aid,
yes.
Weaponry. At this point, Kurdistan, although has the willpower, the Peshmergas have the willpower to defend the Kurds in Iraq in general. They don't have the means militarily in weapons. So we're seeking that kind of aid as well.
Okay, we're going to talk about that in a second, but Al, your parents and siblings live in Kurdistan.
That's correct.
Can you give us a sense of that region's unique identity and the context of northern Iraq?
Sure. Many Canadians might not know about the region of Kurdistan up north of Iraq. It's actually a very multicultural society. We have many minority groups living together peacefully. You don't really hear about the north of Iraq in Western media because it's relatively stable. It's very secure. It's been recently flooded with refugees that have taken over public parks, just because the government there isn't being aided by the Iraqi government, the central government, to help take care of these refugees. And the Iraqi government is very divided along sectarian lines, where the Kurdish government is not. It's dedicated to protecting all the minority groups that live within Kurdistani borders. And that's what the Kurds are like. They're basically welcoming anybody that needs help, because we've been in that situation ourselves where we've needed help in the past. And that's why you see many Canadian Kurds in Canada nowadays as a result of those conflicts.
What are family members telling you?
It's become a little bit calmer since the United States has agreed to provide military aid, and as a result, it's the refugees have calmed down, the cities are calmed down, but our frontline soldiers and our Peshmerga forces, they're constantly fighting the ISIS terrorist group that's trying to take over our regions, and our regions are very stable, very welcoming to all the refugees, no matter what religion. We have Yezidis Kurdish Yezidis that we're protecting. We have Christians we're protecting. We have Jewish communities we're protecting as well.
Pergine, you fled Kurdistan in the late 80s. Watching these events unfold now from a distance, what's going through your mind?
The fear, the anxiety, the intensity of the situation, and just the hopelessness of all this, really. From afar, seeing it, I just really feel like there's really little I can do from afar, and I hope and wish that we could do more here from Canada, and that is why we're seeking Canada's help in this regard.
What's the reality for the Kurds taking refuge in Sinjar?
The reality is that really they're going to be either slaughtered or, forced to die because of thirst, dehydration, and just fatigue, really, because the heat there is just, 100 Fahrenheit.
And for those left there, who continue to be left there, it's difficult to get aid to them, I understand.
Yes, it's expected to take about another 10 days for them to be all flown out of the area.
I want to talk about the Peshmerga because this is where I imagine you're saying the aid should go, military aid of some kind, weapons, etc. And we've seen that ISIS has benefited certainly from the American weapons that were left on the ground in Iraq as they pushed through. The Peshmerga in numbers seem to outnumber ISIS, and yet they have not been successful in turning that around without aid. What does that mean if we hand over arms to the Peshmerga?
I think the Peshmerga forces, the Kurdistani forces, have proven their dedication to the fight against terrorism. They're the only viable source of military in the Middle East right now that's actually willing and is seeing progress fighting the ISIS terrorist group and many other terrorist groups. Actually, they're not alone. And the Peshmerga are credible. They're professionals. They're well trained, and the only thing they lack right now is arming. They have the arms that they have now have been it's mostly from the 80s and 90s during the fighting of Saddam Hussein's regime, the former regime of Iraq. But the ISIS group is, from the spoils of war that they've won, in Syria and in Iraq, it's modern weaponry that we're fighting, and that is what's setting us back, or setting the Peshmerga back. So the military aid that we need is weaponry, maybe further training, and even criminal intelligence to fight the ISIS group on the ground.
And then there's a larger context. I want to talk about Kurdistan's long-standing relationship with the West. For 23 years, it's been on the American protected no-fly zone. It's in the capital, Erbil, is a boomtown for Western oil companies. What are the global implications then of this conflict?
Well, I think the economic side of the equation is huge, and you see, I think NATO countries have a lot of investments in the Kurdistan region up north, and for that reason, it's like you said, the oil business is very big there. It's a huge supplier to the world market, and it's not just Kurdistan in Iraq as well, but for the Kurdistani people, I think they're just sick of war. They're done with war. They don't want war, and the last 23 years of peace has proven that, right? We don't want conflict with anyone. People are attacking us. These terrorist groups are attacking us, and we're here crying out for help, for military aid, for humanitarian aid from the Canadian government, because right now not enough is being done.
Pergine, last word to you today on the Hill. What are you asking the federal government for?
We're asking for the Canadian support in military and humanitarian aid, and we are also seeking Canada's assistance in bringing a few refugees here, because I think Kurdistan is actually bombarded with the amount of refugees that are seeking Kurdistan in the north.
Well, it's not the last conversation we'll have about this. I thank you both very much for coming in, and also for bringing your little one in. At the same time, good morning to you both. Al Jaff and Perjeen Jaffer are co-organizers of a rally today by the Kurdish Canadian community. The demonstration will take place on Parliament Hill between 10:30 and 1 p.m. this afternoon.